Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, you'll hear from Raiders safety Duron Harmon and cornerback Sam Webb, two guys that we had an opportunity to catch up with in the Raiders locker room following the loss to the Indianapolis Colts, plus a really good conversation I had with Jeff Howe from The Athletic on Tuesday on Raider Nation Radio 920. Really good conversation about head coach Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler, the plan moving forward, and why he believes that they could still be a really good duo here in Las Vegas with the Raiders. You'll hear that conversation again, a really good conversation. Plus, we'll close out the show with your calls and texts. A loaded show on this Wednesday, November 16th, 2022.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won, and won, and won, and won, and won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the Locked On Raider podcast free and available on all platforms. And when I say all platforms, Raider Nation, I mean all platforms, including YouTube. Definitely appreciate all the support. We've seen the growth of this show grow massively, right, over the past few weeks. My man Ari is really doing a fantastic job in the background. Definitely appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces, so definitely give him a follow and check him out as well. Again, does a lot of great work, not only here for the podcast, but also on ESPN Las Vegas, part of the Las Vegas Sports Network. Definitely appreciate his efforts. Today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is brought to you by BetOnline.net. They got you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline.net. That is where the game starts. And it's so funny, Raider Nation, thinking about today's show and trying to figure out what direction I was going to go. I didn't really know exactly what to do. I kept going back and forth. Should I do this? Should I play this? Should I let you hear this? Should I let you hear that? Tuesday's show of on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness was really good. I was at Allegiant Stadium. I was able to be inside the David Hum broadcast booth. That's where Jason Horowitz and Lincoln Kennedy, they do their broadcast each and every home game. And I was there for the Tom Flores High School Football Coach of the Year Award. Every single week during the high school football season, I'm able to talk to another coach and give them the weekly award. And at the end of the season, the Raiders hand out the Coach of the Year award. And so I was able to do that on Tuesday and had a really fun time doing that. And head coach Brent Lewis from Mawapa Valley here in the Las Vegas area was able to come away with the Tom Flores High School Football Coach of the Year award. But it was just really cool to be in the broadcast booth that those guys actually broadcast the Raider game from. And, of course, the last time that they were in that booth was Sunday, which was a loss to the Colts, so it wasn't a great day for them. But, man, I'll tell you, Tuesday was a great day for me just to be able to do my radio show from there, and it was really cool. And I actually had an opportunity to talk to Lincoln Kennedy and just realize how, blessed I am to be able to do what I do on the daily, regardless if the Raiders are winning or losing or not. I mean, still to have that opportunity to be in Allegiant Stadium and doing what I was doing my radio show was a next level experience. And so I had an opportunity to talk to Lincoln Kennedy, and that was a really good conversation. I thought about bringing that to the table, but I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and since Josh McDaniels is a conversation that's hot and heavy, let's go ahead and hear from Jeff Howe, who I also talked to on Tuesday on Raider Nation Radio. And so that's going to come up in segment number 2. But I did talk to Lincoln Kennedy, and even though that was a really good conversation, I just want you to hear one soundbite that he had, and it was about the frustration with Darren Waller. And the reason I'm going to play this is because, well, on Tuesday's show here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, talked a lot about Darren Waller and talked about Vinny Bonsignore's piece that he put out saying sources people are getting frustrated with Darren Waller not being available. So I asked Lincoln straight up, we talked to Vinny about it. How frustrating do you think it is for Coach McDaniels and that Raiders offense that Darren Waller has not been available and now he's on IR?
It wouldn't be frustrating to me at all. And the reason why is because if he doesn't want to be there, I don't want him there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And it's just, to me, it's strange because he gets paid, in the offseason. It was something that obviously the regime wanted to make sure he got and wanted to make sure he was part of the offense moving forward. And then it just, the hamstring, whatever the case may be, it just seems like there's some kind of disconnect. And so it's got to be disappointing.
Well, I would say this. There's not a time when you're playing sports, and for all those who know to play the game, where something doesn't hurt. Or
right.
Something isn't agitated or aggravated,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to try to work through it. If your heart is to be on the field and be the best you can and help your teammates, you'll find a way to get out there. If not, then not. And then it just goes like that. I mean, I've never seen a hamstring take this long, but that's just me. I
Right.
can't say. I'm not going to sit there and say, what, if he's in pain or he's faking or I'm not saying that at all. And I don't want anybody tweeting me saying that crap either. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm just saying it's all about heart. And there's times where you got to put your feelings aside. If you want to be out there, you'll be out there. You'll make it happen. And if you don't, you don't. And my thing is after 3 weeks of going nowhere, and then they put you on IR, or you down for another 4 weeks. You don't want to be in here, you don't be in here.
There you go right there, the great Lincoln Kennedy. And that was just some of the greatness that he dropped on me on Tuesday on Raider Nation Radio 920. Lincoln's great. He joins me on the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you ever want to hear him live, make sure you tune in because, again, he brings the heat each and every time. He also does the Raiders Roundtable with JT and myself. We did that on Tuesday at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center. Raider Nation, when I say I was busy on Tuesday, I was really busy on Tuesday. So hopefully you're able to check out that podcast as well whenever you get an opportunity. It's also available on YouTube, Raiders.com, all that good stuff. We do it every Tuesday, the Raider Roundtable, Lincoln Kennedy, JT the Brick, and myself. So I also have some locker room sound that I want to get to real quick that I want to make sure I get to so it's not old. Right. And we're going to turn the page to the Denver Broncos. Of course, coming up on tomorrow's show, we'll have the crossover edition with Cody Rourke, host of Locked On Broncos, talk all things Raiders Broncos. The second time around, both teams underperforming. They're 3-6, and the Raiders are 2-7. Both teams underperforming on the season, or they're 3-7. I don't know. The Broncos have 3 wins, and the Raiders have 2. That's what I know. But let you hear from Safety Duron Harmon. He was one of the guys that we caught up with in the locker room following the game on Sunday. And of course, was not in a good mood. No one's going to be in a good mood following a loss, especially your third loss in a row. But here's Duron Harmon in the Raiders locker room following the loss to the Indianapolis Colts.
Both offensively and defensively. So how do you fix that?
You got to fix it with your play. That's the only way. It has to be an intent, and you have to go out there with the intent not to, get penalties. Penalties have been, kind of putting us in a tough spot, and it's already hard enough, playing against, good teams. So just got to have intent.
Message-wise, what was set up for this one, just in terms of, to stay locked in here moving forward?
Stay locked in. We're right there. It sucks. This is our 6th loss under a one-possession game. So, we're right there. We just got to find a way to win the game. And we had our chances, but we'll see when we watch the film. We made it, obviously, the game harder than we needed to make it.
And on that long-run touchdown by Taylor, what did you see?
It was just I slipped. Excuse my language, but that's something that I pride myself on doing. Getting the guy on the ground, being a short tackler, and I just slipped. And then with a guy like that, you can't slip. You can't have any wasted movements. He's out the gate. He's one of the best backs in the league for a reason. Can't have no wasted movements. And at that point, I had an opportunity to make the play, and I slipped.
Do you feel like everybody in this locker room is bought into the message here that's been spoken?
For sure. We've seen that each and every day with the way we practice, the way we prepare. But right now it's just not correlating the wins. And whether that reason is, we'll see it. But we put ourselves in tough positions over and over again. And until we stop doing that, we're just making the game harder than what it should be.
Devontae said Sundays should be the most fun days for you guys, and it hasn't been. What do you think's been the biggest cause there for that?
Repeat mistakes. We talk about, you just said, the penalties, execution in critical situations. So until we, get better in those situations, we're just making the game too hard. It's already hard enough, and we got to stop making it harder than what it needs to be.
Why is it so hard to translate from practice to the game time consistently?
It's the game. It's opposition.
Yeah.
You got people going against you, and never no excuses. But we just gotta be better. We gotta see the ways that we're losing, and we have to use that in practice and be better in practice so that we're better in the games when these situations keep coming up.
So there was Duron Harmon right there, and, he was pretty upset at himself by not being able to get Jonathan Taylor to the ground, knowing that he prides himself in being a short tackler. He took a bad angle. He slipped, as you heard him say, and you just can't do that against a guy like Jonathan Taylor. He'll make you pay every single time, and they did, right? And, of course, that wasn't the only reason why they didn't win the game. There was multiple reasons why they didn't win that game on Sunday, including the fact that rookie Darian Butler didn't fall on the fumble that Sam Webb created. Sam Webb, the undrafted free agent, is getting a little opportunity to get some burn, and I thought Sam Webb looked pretty good on Sunday. I really do. He made a few different plays, breaking up a couple passes and also forcing a fumble. The only problem is that he forced the fumble. Darian Butler didn't fall on it. He tried to pick it up and run with it instead of just falling on it. And again, that's the difference between a really good team and a team that's 2-7. A really good team falls on the ball, secures it, gets it back for their offense. A team that's 2-7 is a team that tries to pick up the ball and run with it and misses it completely, and the Colts get it back in the very next play. They score a touchdown. I'm not mad at the effort from Darian Butler. I know he was trying to score. I get it, but in that situation, you just got to be smarter than that, and you've got to secure the ball. He didn't, and, well, we know what happened the very next play. But here's Sam Webb. Looks like he could be a promising rookie. I'm actually looking forward to seeing a little bit more of him the rest of the way, the next final 8 games. Hopefully get to see a bunch of Sam Webb to see what he could bring to the table, but I'm excited to see what he can do. Here's Sam Webb, just a quick minute from him in the Raiders locker room following the game on Sunday.
The play caller never called plays before. The coach just came in. How difficult is that to prepare for?
It actually wasn't that difficult. We just studied the film that we had and saw the tendencies and played to our strengths. And whenever we noticed them, we played to them.
When you guys were so close to getting that turnover and the next play they score, I guess how much did maybe the lingering effects of not coming up with it maybe affect the next play?
Like I said, we just got to be able to come up with that in critical situations and understand that once we don't, we got to be able to bounce back and control what we can control.
Do you feel like you're starting to truly come into yourself and get used to the game speed a couple games in now?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, I've been gotten used to that. I feel like I got the most confidence in myself. It's just a matter of going and executing them now.
Did this feel different than some of the other games? You guys have had a couple of losses here, but was this different at all?
Nah. We all a team. We all got to stick together, win or loss. So we're just going to move on to the next and keep preparing, keep working.
So there you go right there. Rookie Sam Webb, just quick minute. You hear he's got the confidence. You hear he's sticking together with the team. And, what else is he going to say? Not a whole lot, but you can also hear the frustration. He wants to win just like everyone else in that locker room wants to win. I'll tell you right now, I'll go to my grave and tell you every single player in that locker room wants to win. Now, they might not all want to put in the work to win as hard as some other guys, but they all want to win. None of them want to lose. Coming up in segment number 2, a really good conversation I had on Tuesday on Raider Nation Radio 920 with Jeff Howe from The Athletic, talking all things Raiders head coach, Josh McDaniels, talking Dave Ziegler, talking about New England Patriot coordinators and all that good stuff. So you hear that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, do want to tell you about Turo. I'm sure you're thinking right now, Q, what's Turo? It's the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. You can book any car you want wherever you want it from a community of local hosts across the U.S., U.K., Canada, and it's actually coming soon to Australia. Forget boring rental cars. Find your drive at Turo.com. It's the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. It's almost like Uber, but for your vehicle. You can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget, just need to get from A to B. You can get a classic or a luxury car for a special event, birthday, holiday, or you can get a big body, get a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars. Find your drive at Turo.com. I also want to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain you have access to your best qualified candidates available? Of course you do. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs will help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. All you do is create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. Then you add your job and your purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you'd like to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast is a little bit longer than I wanted to be, so I'm going to jump into it real quickly. Jeff Howe from The Athletic joined my radio show on Tuesday to talk all things head coach Josh McDaniels, talk about Dave Ziegler, the plan moving forward. And the reason he did is because on Monday he tweeted out, head coach Josh McDaniels has been given assurances by ownership that he will return to coach the Raiders in 2023, according to a team source at The Athletic. And so when I got him on the radio, I asked him, hey, I saw your tweet. I read the tweet. How firm do you believe that is? And can that change quick, fast, in a hurry if things don't get better this season?
I wouldn't have gone with something like that unless I totally believed in its authenticity. So this has been an approach that Mark Davis has wanted to take as a patient, long-range view since he hired Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels. And they want to build something. They don't want another one and done or a two and done type of situation, something that, just totally stunts the growth of a franchise. Mm-hmm. So when you bring in two guys who are so familiar with each other in Ziegler and McDaniels, it's with that long-term plan in mind. And I know I've certainly seen on Twitter over the last 24 hours, there's a lot of frustration among Raider fans, and I get that. But dumping McDaniels 9 games in or 17 games into his tenure as Raiders head coach would stunt the development of this organization.
No, it really would, and I've said that multiple times. You just can't keep recycling through coaches. So I wanted to ask you from a distance. I mean, Coach McDaniels. You saw him as a coordinator there in New England. How surprised are you at the slow start that the Raiders have gotten off to, sitting there at 2-7?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely surprised. And I went out there and I visited with those guys in the summer when I was doing my training camp tour, and I fully have bought into what that message is. They really broke it down. They made it a lot simpler. I understand why there's a stigma on McDaniels from his time in Denver, but he's just such a totally different guy. He's a different person. He's a different coach. He's in a different phase of life. He understands his responsibilities as a head coach right now a whole lot better than he did. So, there's that part of it, and I still think that, he's got the tools to be a successful head coach. The other side is, and I was guilty of this too, I thought the Raiders had a chance to be a playoff team this year. I thought there was a pretty good chance, with the caveat that the AFC West was supposed to be a whole lot more competitive, and you didn't really know which one of those teams wasn't going to maybe live up to the expectations, and now all of a sudden 2 of them haven't. But I just think, when I was talking to, the Raiders people out there back in, I think it was July, I mentioned the aggressive offseason that they had. And they said, hey, I understand why you would call it an aggressive offseason. They went and they made the big trade for Davante Adams. They had long-term contract extensions with some of their core players. On the surface, when you're a brand-new regime, that is going to look aggressive. But beyond that, beyond the Davante Adams addition, this is a team that really gave out a lot of minimal-level contracts as they were looking to retool the roster. You knew that there were going to be some holes on the back end of the defense, and really, as it comes down to it, the entire defense has been underwhelming. And then you knew that there was going to be an issue on the offensive line. We've seen, whether it's the Rams or the Patriots or the Raiders, teams that are not getting good, consistent offensive line play are not playing consistent football, are not playing winning football. So I think we kind of looked at the way the Raiders finished last year. And again, I'm not making excuses for the Raiders. Nobody wants to be 2-7 down there, believe me.
Right.
But I think we kind of thought that they were going to be better than they would be, just kind of banking on that run, the improbable run that they had at the end of last season.
No doubt about it. Again, Jeff Howe is our guest here on Raider Nation Radio 920. My man, Damon's got one for you.
When Josh McDaniels has this playbook, a lot of the players on the Raiders team are saying, hey, how expansive it is, how not hard, but difficult it is to learn. They've compared it to calculus or learning a different language. For those transition years with the Patriots, when it's from Cam Newton to Mac Jones, did those players also have that same difficulty with the Josh McDaniels playbook?
Yeah, and actually, I could write a book on that question. So I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. Present day, the Patriots, without McDaniels, they kind of redid their offense this offseason. They changed the terminology. They wanted it to be more like word association as opposed to just, going off of memory and, words that didn't necessarily mean anything. Another part of that is because McDaniels and Tom Brady were so in sync that playbook and the lingo and the language and everything, like knowing what you had to do before the snap and then how it could change after the snap. That was stuff that if you were, even if you were a talented young receiver, if you were an accomplished veteran, I remember Joey Galloway coming in with tons of experience back in 2009 and just having no clue what to do. It was a tough system for a lot of different people to learn. And then, there was another good point. I swear I had another good point that I was going to make. There's so much that goes into that question. So it's certainly fair to say, and I'm not sure, I'm not there every day. I don't know what the inner workings of the offense look like right now and how difficult it has been for those guys to pick up. But I could certainly see that there would be an element to that. You know what? I know the other one I was thinking. So Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez come into 2010, two guys who were on the football field extremely talented players, high-ish draft picks, and it took Gronk 10 games to get himself onto the field because he just couldn't pick up the playbook. He couldn't understand the system. Aaron Hernandez had sort of like a quicker start but kind of faded down the stretch. And the reason why, looking back, I remember talking to coaches from that 2010 team who were saying, we knew these guys were extremely talented, and if you just put them out there and you gave them the simple assignments, they could go, they could get them, they could hit the ground running and be really successful right off the bat. But it was like you were dropping these guys, they equated it to dropping these guys in the middle of a different country that speaks a different language. And, maybe you can get yourself around, but you can't necessarily talk to the other people in the streets to find out where you're supposed to go because you truly can't understand the lingo with that playbook. And that was kind of like what they were equating it to. So I don't know because, again, he doesn't have Tom Brady in Vegas right now, and there's obviously so many new players that he's dealing with. I couldn't say that it's as advanced and actually I shouldn't say, so back it up. Josh McDaniels wasn't even in New England in 2010, but it was the same offense.
Right.
So, again, I don't want everybody listening to this and being like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. But it was a lot of the same system. Even now, I've talked to people who have said that the Patriots playbook, it's so big that, you basically couldn't even carry it around because they've got archives that are 22 years old. So that's kind of how complicated and complex this whole system is. And, again, I don't know how much of that he has carried to Vegas and forced upon this new team.
And then also when it comes to this playbook, I remember Devontae Adams, he said on the Pivot podcast, and this was in training camp, he said we couldn't just bring someone off the street if they're not the smartest guy, because the playbook is just that hard. So when it comes to injuries in the past, how did that affect the Patriots offense when key starters went down on the offensive side?
Yeah, they struggled. You could see it with Brady. There were times, a lot of times, when he just, I could think of the Gronk situations in particular. If they lost Gronk, or whether it was for a half or several games or the duration of the season, if they didn't have a Martellus Bennett or I guess early in Gronk's years when Hernandez was on the team, if their tight end depth wasn't where it needed to be, the Scott Chandlers of the world, guys who just couldn't come in and contribute the way that you would need. Not that anybody would come in and be Gronk, but you needed somebody to be serviceable. I can't even tell you how many times that you would watch a play and you'd have a backup tight end out there, and you would watch defenses just straight up ignore those guys because they knew that Tom Brady wasn't going to throw it to that backup tight end. Some of that stuff would happen with some of these young wide receivers. 2013 with the Aaron Dobson, Josh Boyce draft, those guys didn't come out as fast as Brady wanted them to, and he kind of wrote those guys off, for lack of a better term. So it was because they just couldn't get with the system and they couldn't learn it at the same pace as Brady. Now, that was also a criticism of Brady out here to an extent. There's only so much you can criticize that guy. But again, a lot of it just goes back to what that working relationship was between Brady and McDaniels and why that system was so advanced in the later years together.
Jeff Howe is our guest here on Raider Nation Radio 920. Unnecessary roughness, and not that I'm doubting these guys at all, and Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels. I am not, but it always is the conversation of once the coordinators get from underneath Bill Belichick, they struggle, right? And, of course, we've seen plenty of evidence of that. Do you know why that is? Why is it such a struggle once you get from underneath that Belichick tree?
That's another one where, we could talk for hours about this because everybody kind of wants to point toward like the one common denominator, the Belichick thing,
right.
And are guys trying to be too much like Belichick? Yeah, that's been true in some instances. And then there are other instances when guys go to just a bad situation. I mean, Eric Mangini, like, what was he realistically going to do in Cleveland? Or, you know, even with the Jets, Cornell in Cleveland, or Patricia with the Lions. Like, those are teams that have historically had a hard time winning.
Right.
Now, those guys had their faults, too. The other side of it, you know, Bill O'Brien did really well with Houston for a handful of years, and then he got too much control, and it backfired. Like, he just kind of lost his way and kind of fell off there. With McDaniels, you know, I talked to Josh about this back in July again, and it was, I asked him that question. I'm like, all right, there's like this stigma. You know, you guys go to different places, you try to be too much like Belichick. Is that accurate? And Josh put it in a way that I hadn't fully comprehended until I heard it straight from him. He's like, look, you know, I came into this league as a 23-year-old. I got that Denver job as a 32-year-old. So everything that he had known from a professional coaching standpoint was from Bill Belichick. So when there was adversity, or, you know, if there was, you know, something on defense or special teams that maybe he should have delegated to his assistants, he just stepped in and said, Larry, you know, I saw Bill do this. I'm going to try to handle it this way because this is just the only way I know. It wasn't that he was trying to be Bill Belichick. It was that he watched a guy do it a particular way for the better part of 10 years. So it's like, you know, anytime somebody gets stressed or faces adversity, you're going to just naturally rely on the things that you've known and seen to work from somebody, a mentor, and that kind of got him into some trouble. So, like, you talk about the delegation, he's got a staff now with the Raiders that he's a whole lot more familiar with than the group that he was able to bring in Denver those first couple of years. So he trusts these guys. If there's an issue, hey, I trust this staff to fix it more than he did or more than he allowed himself to in Denver. Now, again, it hasn't translated to wins the way that they thought they would. But, again, I still believe that this is a guy who is capable of handling that process as long as the patience continues to be on his side.
All right, the patience is on his side, and we keep hearing people say, hey, Josh McDaniel, once he gets his guys in. And I know that people are tired of hearing about Patriots West and the Patriots way, but in New England, was that also a common theme where, hey, we need the right guys? It's not about, hey, is someone talented or not, but we need the right players to fit into our system, because that's what it seems like we're getting a lot of here in Vegas, is that they need the right guys for Josh McDaniel's system.
No, it's a really good question. And, you know, I'll start off with, I remember Belichick saying, this was like probably 10 plus years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, when he was talking about like the one and done or the two and done coaching thing that kind of really caught a lot of steam since, you know, in the 2000s. And he equated it to his own situation. You know, he was 5-11 in 2000 with the Patriots, lost his first 2 games. So he lost 13 of his first 18 with the Patriots. And Robert Kraft went against conventional wisdom to bring in Bill Belichick. He got pressured from the league not to bring him in. He got pressured from TV executives who were like, look at how boring this guy is in his press conferences. He's not marketable. But Kraft wanted to stick with him. And, you know, ultimately things turned around a whole hell of a lot faster in 2001 than anybody could have ever imagined. But, you know, spin it forward, Belichick candidly said he didn't have his system fully in place in New England until 2003. So that's going into his 4th season. Now, the reality, which I think is unfortunate in a lot of cases, is a lot of coaches don't get till their 4th season anymore. So you have to show signs of progress by year 2 and by year 3, or again, you kind of start this cycle over. What you really don't want to have happen is like a Bears situation. You know, they're not the only ones who've done this, but like you get all of a sudden you got a GM and then it's staggered with a new coach, and then you hire the coach, and maybe the owner likes the coach more than the previous GM, and then he fires the GM, and then you just start pairing the wrong people together, and then next thing you know, you're in like a 12 to 15-year vortex, and you can't get better than 8-8. So like that's like the worst possible case scenario. Now, in terms of like what types of players he needs, it doesn't necessarily need to be Bill Belichick types of players, but you know, the one thing that Belichick has been knocked on is he's passed on maybe some high-end talent in the draft, guys that you knew could be bona fide superstars, and gotten a less sexy name, and he's gotten criticized in draft night, and then, you know, like a Logan Mankins all of a sudden comes out of nowhere and becomes an all-pro. he needs people who are going to be willing to do the types of, like, Belichick will have a specific vision for a guy. And, if it might be a quote-unquote boring, nickel type of back when he was an outside corner in college, and you want that number one corner, but, Belichick just has, like a Duron Harmon that you got. Duron Harmon was a highly criticized draft pick in 2013 with the Patriots, and he was a really good third safety for a good chunk of his career in New England. So, just like having that sort of vision. I don't think that Josh is trying to go out there and get a whole lot of New England retreads, but I think he's going to have some of those principles in place where he's going to have a vision for how he wants to use guys, and he just needs the time to acquire them.
So hopefully you enjoyed that conversation right there with Jeff Howe from The Athletic. Really good stuff. I thought he provided a lot of insight. Does that mean that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler are going to get things turned around? No, but it just kind of gives you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, and I think sometimes we need to do that. Again, I know some people are just not going to be sold on head coach Josh McDaniels as long as he's there, especially with the way that they're losing right now. And maybe if they go on some kind of run the rest of the season, who knows? Maybe that'll change. But I understand being skeptical, especially with New England coordinators that haven't really panned out once they leave that Bill Belichick, umbrella and that little, that little bubble that they have going on there in New England. But that's all I got for you for segment number 2. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before I get to that, though, do want to tell you about the title sponsor of today's show, BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. Football, basketball, soccer, esports, they've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, and I know you do, you can find those at betonline.net as well. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today on your laptop or your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline.net. That is where the game starts. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Barry from Baltimore. He's calling to talk about the game, the season, the coaching staff, and what he wants and what he thinks is going to happen. Here he is, Barry from Baltimore.
What's up, Q? This is Barry from Baltimore. Man, damn, what embarrassing loss. Another one. I mean, with this loss, to a coach who's never coached before, former player, coach from high school, to blowing those leads against Arizona, 17-point lead against the Jaguars. It's just embarrassing losses. And then you hear the press conferences after the game with Carr and him being upset, and some people are going to think a certain way. It is what it is. Me personally, I would love for McDaniels to get fired. I just don't see how he's going to be any good of a coach. I bought in at first, because I was just trying to think the best, and then it's just not looking good. But just because I want him fired doesn't mean he's going to be fired. I think he's at least going to be here, of course, the rest of this year, possibly even next year, depending on how they play. But definitely this year and the next year. I don't think Mark Davis is going to fire him. I think you don't want to pay 3 coaches. The one he's going to have to hire, Gruden and McDaniels. I mean, he's just not going to do it. But I guess the only thing we can hope is just that maybe they can get a couple wins. Maybe they look better. I mean, at this point, they're not making the playoffs. I just want to see the team look better, be more competitive, see if they can do that. I'll tell you what, though, I am impressed. Even though yesterday just sucked as an embarrassing game, I was impressed with the play of Sam Webb. Maybe we found something there. Maybe we found a starting corner there. Who knows? So I was impressed by that. Of course, always impressed with Crosby, what he puts out. Adams is a baller. Jacobs is a baller. I really hope they try to bring him back, but I get it with the financial stuff and the money. But man, he puts it out there, and those are the kind of players I like watching. I don't know about them replacing him with Zeus. I mean, everything I've seen of Zeus, you can tell Jacobs is a much superior runner. Now, Zeus might be one of those runners that needs, volume, so that could be his case. But I don't know, man. Just kind of, irritated about the whole thing, just like all Raider Nation. But just want to call in my thoughts, man. There's really no answers, for anything. So they just got to play, and hopefully they can get some wins. And guess we're going to be talking about draft here shortly, and just hope they can get better. I guess it's the only thing to look forward to. But anyways, man, I appreciate what you do, man. if it's good or bad, you're still giving us this content, man. So shout out to you, man. All right, man. I'm out.
Barry, thanks so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And as I said before, this is evaluation season. It's time to get everyone who is not working out the way they're supposed to most likely be shown the door, right? I mean, that's as simple as it is. I mean, guys are going to be shown the door if they're not cutting it the way that the coaching staff and the front office wants them to. You're absolutely right. No answers. Just got to ride it out. There's 8 more games starting with Denver this week, Seattle the following week. They're on the road the next 2 weeks. So, again, evaluation season is in full effect. Thank you so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, I got a text from Isaac in Arizona. It says, Yo, Q, it's Isaac from Arizona. Just want to acknowledge the fire McDaniels chants. Why? Carr and Adams and leaders are openly and privately putting other players on blast for not actually buying into our team to the full. There's blame to go around across the whole playing field, but fire McDaniels? Why go through coach after coach after coach? Just doesn't make sense. That's the easiest way to stay irrelevant. Got to be patient. It's year 1 into a new regime. Let them find their guys. Isaac in Arizona, thank you for that text. And yeah, that's really why I had that conversation with Jeff Howe from The Athletic in segment number 2, because again, that's really what it's all about. You just can't keep going and changing coaches over and over and over. You just can't do it. If you do, you're never going to get continuity. You're never going to be able to do something and sustain it. It's always going to be, a quick minute and then it's gone. Quick minute and then it's gone. Quick minute, it's gone. So that's why Mark Davis is attempting to keep this whole staff intact, head coach and all, and make sure that they're able to have an opportunity to build things up. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, they can't embarrass themselves the rest of the way, because things, as far as I'm concerned, could change quick, fast, and in a hurry. Up next, got a call from Raider Mailman. He's calling to talk about the loss and also talking about Derek Carr and his feelings after seeing his emotions following the game and how he compares that to head coach Josh McDaniels following a loss. Here he is, Raider Mailman.
What up, Q? Raider Mailman here. Tough loss, like you said, embarrassing. I could hear it in your voice having the podcast. Thank you for giving us that information, but it's just tough on all of us having to see this team, all the potential, all the talent. I think it's pretty clear. We hear it all the time. Once the coach or the locker room gets lost, just cut it, just trim the fat and just try to insert something new. We've seen Derek Carr cry. And like you said, we're not – the people who love Carr, it's not because he's Tom Brady. It's not because he's Aaron Rodgers. We know that. But he gives his all. He cares. He loves this team. I could see silver and black in his blood. I could see – it's very known. On tough losses that other teams may experience, look at Dan Campbell last year, or even this year. He loves his guys. He cries for his guys. We saw that in Rich. We don't see that in Josh. I know this isn't going to start there's already enough of a fire McDaniels, but we don't see that in Josh, We just get the same tape recorded. Hopefully we make the adjustments, or, hopefully we can execute. We need to find something. Like the same thing. He's been saying the same thing after every loss. Very tough. After 23 years, I don't want to watch the Raiders on Sunday. I want to, do stuff around the house, spend time. And I know it's a lot tougher on the OGs that have been a Raider fan longer than I've been alive. But sad, man. I think that's what needs to get done. But Raider Nation, we'll see a better day. Have a good one. See ya.
Thank you for the call, my man. And yeah, I don't hold anything against Carr for showing emotion. I really don't. I actually could appreciate that. I mean, I said it on Monday's show. At least he cares, right? McDaniels definitely tries to keep it as even keel as possible. He said so many times on the sideline when things aren't going right. He doesn't get mad. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't stomp his feet, or in his words, hold his breath, which wouldn't do anything but hurt him. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't do that. He just wants to stay even keel. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. He thinks he makes better decisions when he does that. And so, I mean, that's just who he is. That's who he's going to be. Some people have no problem showing emotions. Some people have no problem getting fired up. I like it when people get fired up. I like it when people show emotions. I think that, that shows something. But again, everybody's not like that. So I understand where you're coming from. I understand where Coach is coming from, and definitely understood Derek Carr on Sunday and where he was coming from. Thank you so much for that call. We'll close things out with a text from Seth in Reno. He says, Hey, Q, I got something I'd like to point out. The Raiders last year had, I believe, 6 come from behind wins last year. Is that not how many single score losses we have this year so far? We're 2-7 this year and could have easily lost at least 10 games last year as well. This is not a good team. We cannot blame it all on Josh McDaniels. This hasn't been a good team since 2016. And a point could even be made we were purely explosive that year and not well-rounded. I love our quarterback because he's a fighter. Can we please start to surround him with a defense that could do something? He has never had a defense rated above 20th in the league for almost 10 years now. What did Josh McDaniels have in Foxborough? Defense. Love the podcast. Keep up the hard work. Seth in Reno. Thanks so much for that text, my man. I do appreciate you. And I mean, yeah, that's the thing about it. You know, all the wins that they had last year, all the walk-off wins, those were something that you can't count on year after year after year. And, you know, there was some people nationally that I had on this show and on my radio show that said, you know what, Q, I don't believe the Raiders are going to be that good this year. And this is why. And that was a big reason. And I remember so many people called and texted in or tweeted at me and was like, oh, that guy's crazy. He's a hater. Oh, national media hates the Raiders, you know? And I was like, no, it's not it. It's just their difference opinion. And a lot of people to a T were like, no, they're just haters. No, they were onto something. They knew that you can't rely on walk-off wins like the Raiders had so many times in 2021. That's going to eventually the numbers are going to even out. And unfortunately for the Raiders this year, the numbers are evening out. All the games they won last year, they're losing all those this year. And so if they did win all those, yeah, they'd be in a great position. Unfortunately, they're not. So I think that you're onto something. You see, you know, the bigger picture. That's not Josh McDaniels' fault. And clearly this team has a lot of holes, even holes I didn't see early on. So, I mean, it sucks that this is where it's at. It sucks that all the excitement going into the season is now where it's at after 10 weeks and 9 games. But that's where it is. And so now the team just prepares for Denver. It's evaluation season, and you hope that the team can find some guys to build around and keep building going into the offseason. Free agents and draft picks. And I say a lot of that needs to be focused on exactly what you said, the defensive side of things. So thank you so much for that text, my man. I do appreciate you. And that's all I got time for on today's show. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have more news and notes. Plus, we'll have the crossover edition. Cody Rourke, host of Locked On Broncos, will join the show to break down the Week 11 matchup. Raiders and Broncos in Denver this time, as the Raiders already knocked them off in Allegiant Stadium. Can they beat them for the 6th time in a row? Well, we'll talk to Cody Rourke about that tomorrow on the crossover edition here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So thanks so much again for making the Locked On Raiders podcast your first listen each and every day, Raider Nation. Appreciate you as always. You know you can find the show free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Again, shout out to my man Ari doing a fantastic job at Ari Produces on Twitter. You can check him out. And please believe we'll be back here tomorrow knocking things out with the crossover edition. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family, and most importantly, as always, just win, baby.